So I have a new dating rule for myself. I've been thinking a lot about what are some new things that I want to put into place, right? Whenever I start dating again and start engaging in the romantic sector of life. And I've stumbled upon, I have a few rules, but the main one I wanted to talk about today, because I think that this is going to be very relatable and definitely worthy of a conversation, is the fact that I really want to be very attracted to and excited about whoever it is that I romantically engage with next. Now that sounds kind of insane. Paris, why would you need to tell yourself to make sure that you're really into the person that you're dating? Here's the situation that I have found myself in the past. Somebody approaches me, expresses interest, expresses desire, in real life. You know, this is no shade to anyone that I've romantically engaged with in the past. Like pretty much every notable experience I've had has been with someone that I really like. But somebody will approach me, express desire, and I will feel obligation. I will feel like I have been indebted to this person in one way or another, that this person has expressed this desire for me, and I have to show up to that desire, that I have to answer to whatever it is that they want from me. And I have really been trying to trace back this thought process. Like, where did I get here? How did I get this idea, right? And I think a lot of this has to do with this entitlement that we have towards women, with the entitlement that we have towards women's time, women's bodies, women's energy, and generally this idea that exists in a lot of different facets of our culture, that women are to be blamed for the attraction that other people have for them, right? If we can just look at dress codes. We can look at dress codes, we can look at modesty culture if you grew up in religious spaces. I will say, as someone who grew up in a Christian home, actually didn't weirdly enough have very many conversations about modesty in my house, like with my parents, but there would be like conversations about modesty in my broader church community or at church or whatnot. And there's always this either explicit or underlying assertion that like you are modest because you do not want to let your brothers in Christ, right, stumble. Your body is going to make them stumble. Your body is going to prevent them from having proximity to God. So you need to, take care of that. This is one of the many ways in which we tell women that it is their fault, the reaction that people have for them and the entitlement that people have to their bodies. So if somebody likes you and they hurt you, they do something mean, they're aggressive, they're entitled to you, it is your fault. It is your fault if you wind up being hurt by a man because you elicited that desire from him. And so I think it was just a hodgepodge of receiving that sort of narratives that people being attracted to me is my fault. And also that, good women, good, respectable women, they don't deny people. They don't hurt people. They show up. They will give someone the shirt off their back, right? We reward women. We tell stories about how the best women in our world. I was just thinking about this with Mother's Day, right? On Mother's Day, all we're doing is sitting around in circles and talking about all the sacrifices that our mothers gave for us. Now it's beautiful, and I reflect on the sacrifices that my mother gave in order to raise my sister and I. However, sometimes when I hear these stories, I start to feel really bad. And I start to think about why this is the expectation that we have of women. Why do women have to suffer so terribly in order to be celebrated, in order to be looked at kindly, right? Why don't we live in a world where we support mothers better? Why don't we live in a world where women don't have to sacrifice so much in order for our communities to run smoothly? But if I were to go into that, I'll go into a whole tangent about how this world is built off of the backs of women who hate themselves, and how, as a woman, you do kind of have to hate yourself in order for this world to function well, because we live off of self-sacrificing women. That would be a whole other conversation. So, but what this, getting back to the point, right? Looking at this world, what the idea that this gave me was that I had to rise to the occasion of whatever person was attracted to me, right? That a good woman is going to show up to this. You're going to show up to their desire for you. You're going to show up and give this person whatever it is that they want from you, right? And even as I came out, even as I got older, even I started to, learn feminist theory, these ideas still followed me, like it was not a matter of waking up one day and giving myself a little feminist mantra and suddenly I don't care about being good. Suddenly I don't care about being agreeable. Suddenly I don't care about being the kind of woman that people describe as being so nice and kind and endlessly accommodating. And so I just found myself, I particularly think about the romantic experience I had with a man last year. And, that experience went pretty poorly for a lot of reasons. But I don't really sit around and, talk poorly about that man for several reasons. But even though, I could, because he didn't do the kindest things to me, but also because I sit there and I think, Paris, you should not have been there. There is no reason that you actually should have been romantically engaging with that man. There is no reason why you should have, went on that date with him or continued to talk to him or anything. Like every single time that I, hung out with that man and, I was there voluntarily, like every single time I was there, I should not have been.
And so I think it's easier for me potentially to forgive him or to not like see him so poorly in such a bad light, because I'm like, well, I shouldn't have been there in the first place. But the only reason I was there was because I felt indebted to him, because I felt like somebody's romantic attention to me was very valuable, because I felt like this is where I got my worth from, that this is where I got my value from. Not only my value as a woman in the sense that I can now move through the world feeling like I had gained the social validation from these very majestic, powerful, top of the food order creatures, men, right? Because we live in this world, right, where we pedestal men. So if a man likes you, it's like a field day. You have a field day with that information. Not only did I feel like that element of pride, I guess, in the fact that I was being liked by a man, but also in that this was going to boost my social cachet in the other spaces that I enter, right? That I can finally have conversations with my girls, and that I could offer this proof that I was desirable. I could share stories about a man who liked me, and I felt like I had a leg to stand on, that I was no longer the girl that people were like, oh, what's wrong with her, that people don't like her, that she's not being picked, that she's not being validated in this way. I felt like I could, play on everybody else's field. Even in my family, in my community spaces, like we definitely look at young girls, and one of the first questions that people ask you is whether or not you have a boyfriend, especially when you're talking to people from an older generation. Not, how's school going? Do you have a job? Hobbies? Anything like that. Boyfriend. There's always a joke, you're sitting down at the nail salon. You're being asked about your boyfriend, your love life, right? It is just something that follows you everywhere. And I liked the fact that I finally had that social cachet, that I finally had this proof that I was desirable, that I finally felt like I was being a woman in the right way. And these were, this alongside of a lot of other reasons, honestly, were the reason why I romantically engaged with that man. None of this had to do with me desiring him. None of this had to do with me liking him. None of this had to do with us having a good conversation. None of this had to do with any feelings that I had towards him, right? This was, the timeline gets a little blurry here on when I was talking to him and when I came out. So, of course, there was like my lack of attraction to him. I actually don't blame on not being attracted to men fully. Or no, I said that wrong. You could have gone through that same exact experience and be a woman who is attracted to men, right? Because women who are, attracted to men doesn't mean they're going to like every single man you meet. But there are women who are still engaging romantically with men who they're not attracted to. There are lesbians who are engaging with women that they're not attracted to. There are people in general who are engaging with people that they're not attracted to. It doesn't really have anything to do, you could boil down my past experience with a man on sexual orientation, but I think that there's also something to be said here about feeling like you are indebted to the people that express attraction to you, feeling like the most important thing for a woman is being a good woman and answering to people's desire. And so it got to a point where I had to, and this is also partially kind of going back a little bit into a sexuality conversation, but I'll broaden it up. We have this feeling of I engage with a lot of conversations online with lesbians about like, how do you figure out that you're gay? How do you figure out what your sexual orientation is? And so much of this kind of goes back to this understanding that like, we do not know what it feels like to feel desire. Like, we just don't know. And I think this also, partially my theory, is the reason why lesbians generally come out later in life than gay men do. Because for men in general, their attraction, their desire, what they want is pedestaled, and everybody else kind of just files themselves around it, organizes themselves around it. We organize ourselves around male desire. So as a woman, you're not trained to think very hard about what it is you want. You're not trained to think very hard about what it is you're desiring, who you're attracted to, because it's never been important. It's never been important. We treat relationships, we treat men and women romantically engaging with each other, like when we're looking at all of these dating advice and whatever, a lot of this, like the underlying assumption is that you kind of need to like trick a man into a relationship. Here's how you make that man fall in love with you. Here's all the 10 tricks on how to get a guy to be obsessed with you, right? It's all about organizing ourselves around men, trying to earn male desire, male attraction. It's just all centered about what it is they want and what they desire. Like, where are the conversations about, as a woman, is this what you want? It just got way easier because I always, throw around this term of like, or this idea that men desire and women are desired. Men desire, women desire being desired, men just desire. That is the way that desire is organized in our world. And if you don't pay attention then, as a woman, you can wind up in situations where you're romantically engaging with people, or even in friendships and in whatever kind of relationship, where you're pandering to people that you don't even like, they don't even have any desire for, because you were never told to like stop and think about what it is you want. So I realized that at some point I had to pause and figure out what it felt like to be attracted to somebody, figure out what it felt like to want someone, and realize that was a feeling that had to be present in every single romantic engagement that I had thus after. So I remember one time I had a crush on a girl that I had a class with. And I remember seeing her and just being so fixated on, like, and I could sit there and I could be staring at the professor and I just knew where she was at the class, in class at all times. Like, I knew just, like, where, what space she occupied. Like, I was always just so aware of her presence. And I would be thinking days in advance before seeing her of, like, what I'm going to say when I see her, right? And so one little phrase, hey, how's your weekend? Like, something like that, I've rehearsed it 50 times. And I've tried on 1,000,001 outfits before I saw her. I'm just, and that feeling of your heart fluttering, feeling a little sick, feeling a little queasy sometimes, right? The nervousness, the giddiness. I just sit there and feel all of that. I always say, like, it's like I took a screenshot of my body to know what that felt like and to get very familiar with that sensation. I wrote a whole essay on it, and that was partially me trying to remember that feeling. I did that so that I could familiarize myself with the feeling of desire, because I knew that was foreign to me, and I knew that I'd never been taught to pay attention that much to it. So remembering it and remembering what it felt like was going to be something I was going to have to do quite intentionally. And so I did that. And now, or after that point, really, I was really intentional about making sure that was a feeling that I found. And that the people that I romantically engaged with after, it was very easy. It was easy to just pay attention to somebody who's just, just go out with somebody because they're there and they like you. And it's fun to be liked, But at some point you have to value liking someone more than being liked, which could be a difficult thing to do when you're a woman. But I think that one of the best places to start is to familiarize yourself with that feeling of desire, and to kind of promise yourself that that's going to be the feeling that you will honor. That has to be there fundamentally in every single romantic engagement that you have moving forward. Not everyone's going to be love at first sight and all these explosive feelings and blah, blah, blah. But fundamentally, what does it feel like to want someone? And also, what does it feel like to just want someone wanting you? Or to just like the fact that someone wants you? To also know what that feels like, so that you could start differentiating from there. So yeah, I'm Paris. Thanks for watching. And comment any video ideas that you have. Bye, guys.